Welcome on in to the Full Court Press. Jason Walker here with Eric Frandsen on 106.9 FM, 1390 AM The Fan. Streaming online at 1069thefan.com and on the 1069 The Fan mobile app and live on YouTube. The Fan KLGN is where you can find us streaming video.
And if you were to look at the video stream, you would see one of us knows what day it is today, and the other one was not very observant of this special holiday. I'll reach over there and pinch you, Jason Walker. You're not wearing green.
If you want to be thrown through the door. I usually deliberately don't wear
stay at arm's
green. Mostly out of protest. Didn't really care for it as a kid. I usually wore green because, other kids are vicious, but and I wasn't always bigger than everybody else. But, yeah, I don't really care. Is what you're wearing even count as green?
Yes, that's absolutely green. That's a shade of green. Yeah, absolutely.
That's debatable. That is like gray, but you rolled around on the grass a little bit. So
it's got shades of green in there.
Shades of green.
Happy St. Patrick's Day to all who celebrate.
Shades of green in the same way that I have shades of biceps. Like
they're hidden somewhere underneath there.
Somewhere. So welcome on in, those of you who are listening to us. Got a lot to go over, but I guess short topic list, but we're going deep dive into what we've got. And we don't have a whole lot of time on our radio portion. Those of you listening on 106.9 FM or 1390 AM or on the mobile app, we will not be very long for those outlets as we'll be handing it over to NCAA Tournament Basketball. It is here, first four today, starting 4:30 p.m. In Dayton. You'll be able to hear those broadcasts. We've got wall-to-wall NCAA Tournament Thursday and Friday. So if you want to listen to more than about a half hour of us talking, slip on over to the YouTube stream. We'll be going as long as we need to over there. So let's dive right into our topics. Let's not get just too distracted. There's a couple of quick notes we do have. Three different ones. One is that Utah State football started their spring practice today.
Yes.
We'll be diving a little bit more into that later this week. Our thoughts on what needs to happen with what position groups pay attention to, what players pay attention to, who could emerge as starters, key players when there's a lot of turnover on offense and a little bit of turnover on defense. We'll dive into that, but just know that spring football is happening. It's March Madness, but it's also college football in a way.
All spring practices are closed, but there will be a public showcase at the end, thank goodness, where fans can get together and watch this football team. So that's exciting. And that's not until later in April, but it's coming up. And we're going to be working on getting to some of these practices to do interviews with coaches and players so we have an idea of what this team is starting to look like. And then the other big news today is that Utah State softball coach Todd Judge just abruptly resigned, and he's no longer with the program. I don't know the reasons. I don't know the details, but he is gone. Assistant coach will lead the program for the rest of this season, and they are going to launch into a national search to find a replacement coach ASAP. But they're in the middle of their season.
Yeah, middle of their season. They just won their first road series at Fresno State in a long time. They won that series 2-1 over the Bulldogs in Fresno. They got a game against Idaho State today. They're playing today.
Yeah, they play today.
They're playing now. The game started at 4 p.m. unless they're running a bit late. Then they're hosting their first Mountain West series. They're hosting Nevada. I know Todd Judge was optimistic. He brought in some really solid recruits, some good players. They were optimistic about an improvement in pitching, especially in depth, and then being able to bring in a new set of hitters. They've usually had to replace a lot of hitters each offseason, but usually they've done a good job at bringing them in. It's been up and down this season. Some good performances, some rough performances late where they could have closed out good wins, but. Yeah, just a little surprising there, Todd Judge, because obviously, we don't know what led to it. There are a bunch of different things, good or bad, that could have led to that. So we don't need to speculate here. Just understand that is what happened.
Yeah, that's a thing that happened today.
Yeah. Also, there's a bunch of track and field players earning, I think 3 different track and field players earned All-American honors. Logan Hammer Landon Bott, and the other one was a gentleman whose name I really struggle to pronounce. But I wanted to highlight them. Yeah, so Logan Hammer, second team All-American in the pole vault. Ayodele Ojo, I think is how you say his name. 60 meters, second team All-American. And then, Landon Bott in the 800 meters, second team All-American honors.
Awesome.
So just wanted to note that as well. But now that we've gotten some of the housekeeping out of the way, these are things that need to be brought up and talked about. Let's get to a couple of texts. 3130 text this in at the end of yesterday's show. We're talking about maybe Jared Calhoun leaves, noting that there's any chance we could write into the coach's contract that when they leave, they have to schedule us a home and home. I know New Mexico, I believe, did that.
Yeah, I've heard of somebody else trying that and putting that into the language in the contract.
Yeah. Maybe it wasn't New Mexico. It was somebody. Somebody put in there's a buyout for that clause. They can pay him an extra $250,000 to avoid the home and home, which is kind of pocket change, but it's in there.
Yeah,
there's programs that have done that.
It was somebody in the Mountain West, I swear. But yeah, you know what? If you could get a guaranteed 2 games, or at least a guaranteed check, an added check for in addition to the buyout. I think the games would be really nice, but whomever it is that comes calling, because someone will come calling.
Yep.
It would be nice that there could be something set up there to help Utah State's scheduling for the future.
Yeah. And then one more text coming from yesterday's topics, talking about the Aggies getting a 9 seed in the NCAA tournament. 4150 saying, should have been an 8 seed, but at the end of the day, a 9 seed plays the same role, so there isn't much of a reason to be upset. If the Aggies want to improve their seed, they have to schedule a tougher non-conference. Haven't played one P5 school all year. Take BYU for an example. They played very mediocre in the Big 12, but got in Big 12 play, but got solid wins at the start of the year that carried them to a 6 seed. The committee doesn't punish teams for losing those games, and most of the time you get credit, even if you lose to good teams, but play them close. Hopefully we learn our lesson and schedule some P4 teams next year. I know they wouldn't come to Logan, but go play some neutral court games or away games early on. It'll prepare you for conference play and also for the big dance.
I love it. Great idea. That sounds like a great idea. Why haven't we thought of this sooner?
I think
problem is this is the plight of mid-major programs everywhere. The committee says, well, you didn't schedule anybody. And teams like Utah State are like, we've tried.
Yeah.
The Freedom of Information Act story that came out about Miami of Ohio clearly states the email string, how they tried to schedule somebody. They tried. And these P4 programs won't schedule them. Certainly not on the road. They won't go on the road to play these teams. So then they're like, well, we won't schedule you, but you should play better games. Well, how? How can we get a quad 1A game if you won't agree to play us?
Yeah. Well, I had this.
I think it's an impossible standard.
I had this a couple of different text threads, and there have been, people going back and forth on social media and the replies of a couple of tweets I made the other day. The one thing that I think maybe Utah State can control here is playing road games against these power conference teams, though I'm not convinced that the power conferences are even willing to do those, just straight up buy games where you're playing on the road, no 2-for-1s or anything like that. Because I went and looked up the Big 12 and also ACC. I just did this research while I was going back and forth with this guy, where basically it was someone saying, hey, Utah State should schedule tougher. You look at San Diego State, they've managed to schedule tougher. And it's San Diego State's been able to schedule home games against power conference teams since the mid-2000s.
Right.
And, they've been able to schedule neutral site and away games. Utah State just has never had that luxury. Teams aren't willing to do that with them. But then look, how many home games did Big 12 teams play against anyone ranked, I think it was the top 100 in KenPom? There are 16 teams in the Big 12. How many home games did they play against top 100 KenPom teams? And I looked at the A10, Mountain West, and the West Coast Conference, where you're going to be finding most good mid-major squads. They played 2. I don't remember who it was, but it was 2.
2.
Then it went to the ACC. There were 2. Mind you, there were 6 overall, against anyone from that conference period, but a bunch of them were the bottom end of the conference, so not good teams. So you talk about just playing bye games on the road, a lot of those teams won't do a bye game against you if you're good. because they want an easy opponent. So now, has Utah State truly tried to just do these one-off away games at a power conference school? I'd imagine one of them would say yes. So I have my doubts that they've really tried that avenue. But even then, most of these power conference schools are not scheduling those games. And most of the time when they're scheduling like a home game against a good mid-major, it's like Gonzaga, who, whether you want to call them mid-major or not, there's some people who have had that debate. So it's hard for Utah State to get anyone. Just play a bye game on the road? Well, there's only, if you look at 2 in the ACC and 2 in the Big 12, that's a grand total of maybe 10 to 15 potential bye games that 5 different conferences are willing to play combined against a good mid-major team. Yeah. Utah State's got to fight for one of those spots?
Yeah, it's super hard. Because the pressure on power conferences is to play home games as much as you can. And if you're going to play any road games, it's against another power conference team, and just to build their own resumes in that way. And so they refuse to play teams like Utah State. The Aggies might be able to get like a middling power conference team on a neutral site. And
yeah, they got Iowa last year.
Hope that they have a good season that helps them out. But it's really hard. And it's kind of derailing our intended topic today, but
yeah,
it's really, really hard. I get the point you're trying to make there. 8632, but or excuse me, 4150. But
there clearly does need to be an effort. I think for if there is a road game,
it's a common problem across all mid majors, even across high mid majors, like Utah State. San Diego State's been able to do it, but San Diego State has developed a reputation. Like they win in the NCAA tournament. Teams know that they're not going to get hurt if they go and lose against the Aztecs. Utah State should have that reputation now. They should. I mean, you're not going to get damaged if you lose to the Aggies. They're a good program. The last 4 or 5 years have clearly illustrated that the Aggies are going to have a good program. And if you end up losing to Utah State, wherever the venue is, it's not going to hurt your metrics.
Yeah.
But whatever.
Yeah, it's something the Aggies should be able to find a way to do it one way or the other, but it is an incredibly difficult thing.
Yeah.
8632, sending in a long preview here. I'm going to dive into, I don't know if I'm going to use some of these specific things, but a lot of information on strengths and weaknesses of Villanova versus Utah State. The long and short of it, I'll read this part from 8632 saying, by almost every metric, USU is a better team. If we are on, this could be a 10 to 20 point win. And I think, I'll be honest, of all of the first round matchups of the last, 7, 8 years, however long it's been that they've been going on this NCAA tournament run of almost every single year, this is probably the most optimistic that I've been for the Aggies. I think TCU was kind of the next closest. I was weirdly optimistic about Texas Tech that game, and I ended up being pretty wrong about that.
Yeah.
But was relatively optimistic, though I think I even then I still picked TCU, but I was on the more optimistic end of, it was an 8-9 matchup, so it was one of the better the Aggies have had. But this is probably now the most optimistic I've been for the Aggies. And let's dive into some numbers here.
Creighton's a good program.
This is Villanova they're playing.
Villanova split the regular season with Creighton. But Villanova's a decent program. They didn't lose too many games, especially not to anyone not named UConn or St. John's.
Yeah, they lost mostly to really good teams.
Yeah, they got swept by those teams. Their other losses, they only have one loss to Creighton. They lost to Michigan and to BYU. So the teams that they lost to, they're top 25 teams. They're strong teams in the tournament, Creighton notwithstanding. Outside of that, they've won every other game that they've played. So they have a really good resume. They've played some tough teams. They've got, 5-6 guys that average double figures on offense. So this is a good team, but as we talked about this yesterday, Jason, this is a very guard-heavy team, and for that, the matchups I like for Utah State.
And it's going to be even more guard-heavy because something is I did a surface-level look, Sunday and Monday, and then as I did my deep dive, I found out that one of their forwards is out for the season. Matthew Hodge, their 6'8" sophomore forward, he did his ACL back a few games ago against St. John's. So he will not be playing. So
6'8".
Yeah, 6'8". So like
averages 10 points a game?
Yeah, 9.2 points, 3.6 rebounds. So when you look at their top, I think 8 players now, top 7 or 8 players, they're all 6'6" or shorter, except for one guy, Duke Brennan, who is either 6'10". He's one of the better rebounders in the country.
Yes.
So I don't want to completely overlook him, but they're basically a bunch of guards.
It's small ball.
Yeah, Duke Brennan. They do have Braden Pierce, a 7-foot junior, but he comes in very sparingly. He's basically going to spell Duke Brennan whatever minutes he doesn't play. And he will definitely play just because Brennan is kind of their only big at this point. They've got, guys they got some guys that are 6'6" that are capable of playing that power forward position. But you're going to be having guys that are 6'6", 6'4", playing power forward. 6'3" guys at small forward. So Utah State is actually going to have a size advantage in a way that they typically don't. And I don't know that, as I've gone back and watched film on a lot of these guys, they are not super athletic, quick, strong, in ways that are, in ways that create matchup problems. I guess that's the way I'd put it. Because there are guys that are super quick, especially if they're on the wing, and these guards, they can be matchup problems, either with their combination of size and speed, or just if you're a 6'3" guard, you're super quick. If you're going up against a 6'6", 6'7" forward, that could be a matchup problem. Mind you, then there's, how does a 6'7" player do? Sometimes there's that give and take when you have small ball versus bigger lineups, and it's just a matter of who manages that mismatch better.
Yeah, are you quick enough on the rotations and to stay in front of them?
But these guys aren't really super quick. Now, mind you, a guy like Caden Lewis, he is incredibly crafty as a point guard. And, a guy like Tyler Perkins does literally a little bit of everything. Bryce Lindsey is kind of an interesting player where he can be a little inefficient, but if he hits his shots, that can be kind of interesting. But this is going to be an incredibly guard-heavy lineup. It's also going to be a very slow lineup, but I want to go over some of these players kind of one by one. I did the film dive on all of them, so I'm going to get my mileage out of here. Again, we're going to be going for another 8 or 9 minutes before we hand it off, so we'll probably only get through a couple of these players before we transition fully into just the YouTube portion. But let's start with Tyler Perkins. He's their leading scorer. Probably their most versatile player on the team. Leading scorer at 13.7 points. Second leading rebounder at 5.4 rebounds. And then he's able to dish out 1.6 assists per game. Shoots well inside the arc. Doesn't take a whole lot of mid-range jumpers, but will try them. But he shoots over 50% inside the arc. He shoots 36, almost 37% behind the arc. Then he's able to get to the free throw line a decent amount. And he shoots 74% there. And as I said, he does a little bit of everything. Looking at his kind of spread of shots, there's shots at the basket, there's floaters, there's mid-range shots, there's post-ups. He's coming off screens. He's doing pick and roll. Again, as I said, post-ups as a 6'4" guard. Offensive rebound putbacks, again, as a 6'4" guard. Just go down, he's usually doing one of those per game. And it's just that there's not this one thing that he always does. He can do just about anything, and it makes him a hard player to guard. Because what's his tendency? Basketball. That's the kind of player he is, and so it's just really interesting to see him and how he leads this team. Mind you, it's a very balanced team, but as someone who has to lead the team in scoring, he's about as close as you can come to of a guy who can maybe put the team on his back as far as just being able to do a little bit of everything. Whereas some of these other players have some pretty hardcore tendencies you can kind of latch on.
Yeah, it's an interesting team that, I've been trying to think of who in the Mountain West is similar to this team, and I'm struggling to find too many good comps. But in that there are a lot of different guys who contribute and score, it's kind of like San Diego State.
Yeah.
Where it's not like they have a real dynamic scorer, particularly, who leads the team, and there's other guys who contribute. This is a team where a lot of guys can score. So it's not like you could just take one guy away like UNLV and eliminate Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn, and you're going to be okay for the day. Villanova has a lot of different guys who can score and who will contribute. And so Perkins is certainly the leader of that, but any one of these guys has that ability to get a lot of points on you. Not a ton of points, but a lot of points. And so it's going to have to be a balanced defensive approach against this team, because the scoring will come from a lot of different angles and a lot of different players.
Yeah. I think if you're looking for Mountain West comps, the closest I kind of came was Colorado State, where there's some balance among their scoring. Although they have a little bit more size in the front court. The pace is very similar. I shouldn't say very similar, but like Colorado State plays an incredibly slow pace. And we'll get to how slow pace may actually be something that really works for Utah State. But Villanova, I think they're like 260-something in pace, 296th in adjusted pace. They're one of the slower teams. Colorado State's one of the slowest teams. But we'll get to that as far as the Aggies' potential on defense there. But some similarities with New Mexico. There's a lot of, they're a big guard heavy. You got Tennant and Dayton Albury and Jake Hall. They can kind of guard heavy. And then they got Bullion down low, who's kind of is one of the better rebounding bigs in the country.
Yeah.
So there's some similarities. Again, we're painting with really broad strokes when I'm comparing them to Colorado State and New Mexico, but there are vague similarities to both for a couple of different reasons, but they begin to break apart once you start kind of combing those two comparisons. I do want to talk about Duke Brennan, because I mean that was first thing, like somebody commented when I just quickly posted the stats of everyone. They said, oh, a big who averages a double-double, 12.4 points, 10.3 rebounds. So
he's 6'10", 250 pounds.
Yeah, so
he's a senior, so he's experienced.
Yeah, he's experienced. And the biggest thing is he is basically the definition of a roll and cut big. And it's in the name. They roll on pick and roll, and then they're cutting to the basket, taking advantage of players, helping on defense. He'll fill the empty space. He'll go to the dunker spot. He'll go somewhere in the paint. He'll cut into the right spot, either on a pick and roll where kind of that roll is itself its own cut, or cutting just completely away from the play, filling space, catching a dump-off pass, and throwing a dunk. A third of his points this season come as the roll man on a pick and roll. The other third, or one other third, come from off-ball cuts, where he's not part of the play, and then suddenly he's part of the play because he's cutting and finding space. Or maybe it was part of the play all along, you just didn't notice it until suddenly he has the ball and he's dunking it on you. He also takes a lot of free throws relative to his usage rate. He's taken 165 free throws. He's shot the ball 213 times. That's the 14th highest free throw rate of anyone in the country. Teams foul him a lot. He's not a great free throw shooter, though, 62.4%. And that kind of factors into where Villanova as a team is actually kind of low in free throw percentage. But a lot of that comes from the fact that Brennan takes most of those. He's one of just two players with north of 100 free throw attempts. Caden Lewis is actually another. He's the other one that has taken more than 100 free throws, and he's shooting 58%. So actually kind of struggling at the top there as far as volume free throws. But Brennan is a dangerous big, not in a sense that he'll go for 20 on you unless you just leave him open. He'd go for 20 in the same way Abin Gadarazzi went for like 25 in his season opener last year.
Put 20 on Xavier near the end of at the last game of the regular season.
Yeah, but a lot of that is if you just kind of forget about him. Like if you're Utah State fans that are also Jazz fans, remember how Rudy Gobert could go for 25. But did Gobert create 25 points for himself? No, he was being smart off the ball, cutting well, and finishing well. And Brennan does that. He is a one-trick pony on offense. But if you forget about him, he's going to win the race by himself. He also grabs a lot of offensive rebounds. I think he was, I got it written down here, he's 26th nationally in offensive rebounding rate. He grabs 4 per game. So he will grab a lot of offensive rebounds. That's where he's kind of a similarity to Tomislav Bullion, because he would grab a lot of offensive rebounds against the Aggies. Magoon Gwath grabbed a lot of offensive rebounds in his games against the Aggies. So Utah State needs to be able to put a body on him and make sure that they keep him off the offensive glass, because while he's actually weirdly not good at offensive putbacks, if you get an offensive rebound and then pass it to somebody else, they can make the shot as well.
We got a lot more to get into with Utah State and Villanova. We'll keep it going on the YouTube stream. It's on YouTube, the Fan KLGN. We'll also have it available on our podcast feed. But we got to break away because First Four action is going to be happening tonight. And in Dayton, we'll have full play-by-play of all of the NCAA tournament. and it starts tonight here on The Fan. So if you want to tune into that, stick around. It'll be here, full play-by-play action. If you want more Utah State Villanova, just find us on YouTube.
Yeah, check us out there, and we'll see you guys in a couple of minutes here on YouTube. We'll pass it off to college basketball. And welcome back to the Full Court Press here on YouTube. Only on YouTube now, as we've transitioned over. Well, we've been here the whole show, but obviously the radio portion has moved over to the NCAA tournament, the first four. Which game are they actually playing right now? Yeah,
so that's Westwood 1 coverage, and they do a great job. But tonight, it's right now, it's UMBC versus Howard, 2 16 seeds facing each other. And a little bit later on, it'll be Texas versus NC State, 2 11 seeds facing each other. And both games could go either way. Tomorrow, it'll be a similar tip and broadcast situation. On Wednesday, it'll be Prairie View A&M versus Lehigh, 2 16 seeds facing each other. And then later on, this one I'm really interested in, Miami of Ohio versus SMU.
Yeah.
And right now, SMU is favored by 6.5. So Miami of Ohio has been this great story all along. So can they rebound after that tough loss in conference play in their conference tournament? Are they the real deal, or will they prove all the other
prove the haters right?
All the haters, right? Well, you never played anybody. So that'll be tomorrow night. That'll be the later game on True TV or here on the Fan.
We're here. True TV, the one time per year that people will ever watch True TV.
I know. Occasionally I'll watch Impractical Jokers.
I'll tell you, I think I've said this before on the show at some point, but it's just weird, like, because I'll, been blessed to go to the NCAA tournament games, and I'll be sitting there in the media room. They got TVs all around the place showing all the games, and then, like, when the games are kind of over, all these other stations are going to their studio shows, TNT, CBS. They've got all their people breaking down the day's games, showing the highlights, all that fun stuff. And then the True TV feed is showing Impractical Jokers. It's like one of these things is not like the other.
Sal and Quinn.
Yeah, it's just that what their names are. I've never watched Impractical Jokers.
They're funny. They can be a little inappropriate sometimes.
That's what happens when you're a practical joker. It's you're going to cross the line sometimes. Yeah. We're going to be going over our brackets. I've got mine right here. Of course, we'll actually show it on the YouTube stream. Eric's got his set up. We'll show those, but we're going to continue our breakdown of Utah State going up against Villanova. And so we've kind of highlighted a couple of different players to watch out for. Tyler Perkins, their leading scorer on the season. He's averaging 13.7 per game. They've got Duke Brennan, who's actually their second leading scorer at 12.4 points per game. One of the players that I was kind of most intrigued by, and I spent maybe too much time going over some of his film, that was a Caden Lewis. And for all the time I spent watching it, maybe I should have actually double-checked how to pronounce his name. I still haven't actually done that.
He was a guy who was, if I'm not mistaken, when I was doing some research on him, he's a freshman.
Yep.
But he was headed to Kansas, and they were able to pull him away and get him to Villanova, which that would be a huge win. So he's a freshman, only 6'2", 180 pounds, so not a big guy, but he is a scorer. He dishes the ball. He's solid in steals, and assist to turnover ratio is very solid. But he is smaller, but he's their little floor general out there.
Yeah. As you said, you got the 12.3 points, 5.3 assists, does get the 1.9 steals, but he is, for a freshman, one of the craftiest point guards that I've seen this year. Just the way that he is able to manipulate defenses, because that's where you really kind of unlock another level. Is sometimes, teams will be able to, or point guards will be able to read what the defense gives them and then make the right read, the right pass, the right shot. We've seen that out of Elijah Perryman. Mason Falso has done that a little bit, in some point guard-esque ways. Jordy Barnes was showing that a little bit when he was on the court last year. Like the ability to read the defense, take what the defense gives you, and then make the right play. Caden Lewis manipulates defenses. He makes them do what he wants, or makes them make a choice between one thing or the other, like presses them into that impossible situation, and then makes the right read after that. He creates those problems. He creates situations where the defense have to pick their poison, and then he attacks them from there. And that is the thing that intrigued me the most about Lewis. And that's where, there are a lot of highlights of him doing some really crafty scoring, shooting inside the paint. There are also a lot of plays where, him and Duke Brennan are often the ones doing the 1-2 game with the pick and roll, where Lewis is either going to the basket and scoring, or he's doing a little dump off pass to Brennan once the defense commits to him. So like those two are going to be key. Like how Utah State defends the Lewis and Brennan, pick and roll, like that is going to be a big part of this game. Yeah. And there are ways to do it. There are ways that you can trap, Lewis, and he'll throw the wrong pass, or if you send him to the free throw line, he's not very strong there. If you give him the 3-point shot in the pick and roll, for instance, the weird stat I saw, Eric, I think he is 1 of 27 from 3 when shooting it out of the pick and roll. And overall on dribble 3-pointers, he's like 4 of 40.
Oh, wow.
But On catch and shoot 3-pointers, so if you just pass out to him and he's outside the 3-point line, he's shooting 40% on catch and shoot threes. So he's just really bad at one specific kind of 3-point shot. And so you want to give it to him. Like if you're defending him in the pick and roll, go under the screen, let him shoot those 3-pointers because he has missed those all day. But if you try and help off of him and he's standing in the corner and they pass it to him, he's going to drain that 3 in your eye. Because he's good at those kind of threes. He's good at those kind of stationary 3-point shots, but movement 3-point shooting, he is just bad at. So that's kind of interesting thing with Lewis there, is his weird Jekyll and Hyde with 3-point shooting. So that's a few of the different players. Again, Perkins, Brennan, Lewis, Bryce Lindsey. I didn't have as much time to do some deep film dive, but he is someone who sometimes takes more inefficient shots. The little bit of film I was watching, he'd take these mid-range floaters, mid-range jumpers. He shoots 37% from the field. He does shoot 34% from 3, and some of it, his sub 40% field goal percentage comes from shooting a lot of threes, but he also shoots 43% on 2-pointers. So like he's not great inside the arc efficiency-wise. He's okay outside the arc efficiency-wise. But he can be a dynamic player. Utah State ran into a couple of players like Bryce Lindsey, where he's actually kind of a bulky guard. I think he was like 200 pounds.
6'3", 100. I've got him.
Oh yeah, this is 194
as a sophomore.
He looked bigger on film. I'm gonna be honest. He looked bigger on film. Looked very stocky, and so the ability to kind of bully his way into the paint. But there were a couple guys, I forget their names, but there were a couple of guys similar on Memphis where they would take some of these, inefficient mid-range shots, and if they were hitting them, they were dangerous. And that's where Lindsey can be pretty similar. His efficiency numbers are pretty poor, but if they hit their shots, and it just takes one game for them to hit their shots, then that can be an incredibly dangerous thing for the Aggies, because he becomes a player that suddenly have to, put more resources into stopping, and then there's like 4 other players that can also score in double figures, and so that can be a danger point for the Aggies.
Yeah, and then Devin Askew, I guess he's the other guard that can play and get into double figures. A little bit bigger, 6'5", 195. So they've got.
And he's their guy that's kind of moved into that power forward spot now that Hodge hasn't really. He's on the bench now.
Yeah. So it's when I look at Utah State and what's been fairly effective for them in certain stretches where you've got like a 5-out lineup with Carson Templin, but then 4 other guards out there. If not, sometimes Adlin Elamine with his length as a wing player, but with Drake Allen, Adlan, Mason, and MJ. That's some good length and speed and athleticism that would be hard for this Villanova lineup to keep up with. And I really like Utah State in the matchup here with some of the strengths that the Aggies have and the versatility that Utah State has with its roster, especially how they're playing right now, that I like this matchup for the Aggies.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they attack those 4-guard lineups. How they defend it will certainly be interesting. Like, do the Aggies... they've gone with, Carson Templin, Gary Clark lineups, or Carson Templin, Zach Keller front courts. I doubt they'll go with that in this game just because they don't really need to. And maybe Gary Clark sees his minutes cut, but I think you could see Gary Clark put in there as a way to try and, see if he can get a switch and then have him do a bunch of post pins, because that's something the Aggies have liked to set up him with post pins. Carson Templin as well. Not as much, Zach Keller. We could end up seeing a lot more Carson Templin, Gary Clark than Zach Keller, but like Keller's going to want to be the main one against Duke Brennan. And, using Zach Keller in drop coverages where he's actually been pretty good at staying in front of some guards and just playing effective, smart drop coverage, because they're going to have to play that effectively to keep Duke Brennan from being a problem. So we'll see exactly how they do that. One interesting thing with Villanova, this is something that I kind of keyed in on. I got kind of hyper-fixated on this one trend. And that's Utah State, when going up against slow-paced teams that really not really avoid, but like they don't really go after transition offense. Villanova ranks, they're one of the lowest ranked teams in terms of the amount of times they get out in transition. They're actually pretty decent when they do it. They're efficient in transition, and Tyler Perkins is kind of the main guy there, where sometimes he just goes out and runs and gets a transition bucket. And he's been pretty good there. But Villanova runs transition offense less than 13% of the time on offense. And I went and looked at all the games that Utah State has played this year. I was like, how does Utah State do in games where the other team doesn't run transition offense? I'm going to list off all the games there. I can see if you notice a trend with a lot of these games. So these are all the games where Utah State their opponent has run less than 13% of their offense in transition. March 12th against UNLV in the Mountain West Tournament. March 7th against New Mexico in the regular season finale. February 18th, home against Boise State. February 7th at Wyoming. January 23rd at Colorado State. January 10th at Boise State. December 30th, home against Colorado State. November 23rd, neutral site game against Davidson. November 21st, neutral site game against Tulane. And November 15th, a home game against UTEP.
Aggies did well in all those games.
Yeah, and especially well on defense. EvanMia.com, if you can go game by game and look at Utah State's non-garbage time defensive rating. Those games I just listed off account for the first, second, third, fourth, and sixth best defensive rating performances for the Aggies this season, along with the 15th, 16th, 17th. There are a couple games they didn't do particularly well on defense. At Wyoming, that was their 26th, and then home against New Mexico is actually their 29th instead of 33 games. So there's some hiccups, although I'll tell you the common denominator with those New Mexico and Wyoming games, way over the top three-point shooting. Remember Jake Hall? Wyoming hit 11 three-pointers, a team that typically does not hit three-pointers. They hit 11 against the Aggies. All those other teams didn't really manage to get three-point shooting. Colorado State did it in the first half of the road game, but fell apart. Tulane actually hit some extra three-pointers, and they had 75 points in that game. But Utah State, when opponents don't push the ball in transition, they have been really good at stopping those teams in the vast majority of games, both early in the season and later in the season, with the only trick being three-point shooting. Does the team they're facing manage to hit a lot of three-pointers? And I'll tell you what, that would be a worry against Villanova.
Right.
Because they rank 47th in three-pointers made per game. So they can hit three-pointers. You cannot ignore them from beyond the arc. They've got some players who can hit. But Utah State does very well when they are allowed to get set in their offense. They can also run the press. Villanova's not been particularly elite at the press. St. John's, when they played St. John's twice in both of those games, they gave up like 13 or 15 plus turnovers in both of those games. St. John's pressed them a lot in those games, forced a few extra turnovers that way. So when teams are able to press and also just get into their half-court offense, at least when Utah State's been able to do that, they've been a elite-level defense this year. And Villanova is going to kind of let Utah State do that for the most part because that's their style. And so this is a game that stylistically favors the Aggies. And I think in terms of size matchups, they work well because they can go small and go really well there. They can throw out a four-guard lineup with Drake, Mason, MJ, and Colby King. You got Elijah Perryman in there as well. Adlen can function well in four-guard lineups. He's 6'9", but he can defend guards.
Yeah, yep.
And so there are a lot of things that work toward Aggies having a great avenue to win this game. Now, that's not to just say Villanova has no chance. Because they are a good team. They have faced teams that pressure them. They have faced teams that have size matchups against them. They have faced really tough teams and come out on top. I don't want to pretend that the Aggies are going to win this one running away, but I'm saying there are a lot of reasons to be optimistic about the Aggies having plenty of ways to win this game, and it's just going to come down to how focused are they and how well do they implement, like when they have these advantages, going after them. You got to attack them and be able to come out on top here.
Villanova is 2-6 in quad 1 games, 8-1 in quad 2. So they're combined, 10-7 in quad 1 and quad 2 games. They were swept by UConn and St. John's. But this team is pretty good in a lot of some key areas, as you've kind of talked about. Good at, they manage a lot of three-point attempts, and they make a decent number of three-point shots. in the course of a game. They're a top 50 team in those ranks. They're a top 50 team in assist to turnover ratio, a top 50 team in turnovers per game. So they take care of the ball, they force turnovers, and they shoot the ball fairly well. They're not particularly good in blocks. They're not particularly good in defensive rebounds per game. They're not particularly good in free throws. So as you would suspect with a team that's guard heavy, that they would be good in assists, that they would be good at trying to create turnovers and shoot threes. So if Utah State defensively can manage that defensive presence on the wing with their guards that we've seen, they can do that. But we've also seen sometimes if they're not fully engaged, then if teams start hitting three-point shots, they start to expose or find weaknesses in that Utah State man zone defense and start finding guys in the corner for easy three-point shots. So if Utah State can manage that point of attack on the perimeter, not allow the ball to get down low to Duke Brennan, then I really like Utah State's chances in this one. But Villanova's a good team. There are some metrics that I think favor the Aggies in this. The thing that I think favors the Aggies the most is just Utah State's strengths. And we look at Villanova's strengths, I just like the Aggies' strengths better. And I think Villanova has played a tougher schedule when you look at some of the teams that they've
they definitely
faced.
have. Most of their schedule is top 100 teams.
Yeah, they've definitely gone through a more challenging season than USU has. But both teams kind of lost some games late. Certainly one of the more embarrassing games for Villanova just happened. They got bounced in their first round, their first game in their conference tournament to Georgetown, who was like, what were they, an 11 seed in their tournament? And
yeah.
Villanova was the 3, and they lost by double digits. They got embarrassed by Georgetown. And so Georgetown it kind of illustrated weaknesses of this Villanova team. Utah State has to really study that game film to see what they can learn from it.
Yeah, definitely. We're going to transition away from previewing Utah State against UNLV. We'll go over mine and Eric's bracket.
Villanova.
What did I say?
UNLV again.
UNLV. Gosh dang it. I've done that 2 days in a row. Want to note Napa Auto Parts. They got batteries, headlights, wiper blades. They're all in stock and on sale now at your local Napa Auto Parts. They got Chemical Guys car wash and detailing kits for only $49.99. Air fresheners, shop towels, seafoam, and more. Again, on sale at your locally owned Napa Auto Parts stores. They got locations from Preston all the way down to Providence. So, you got one thing?
Just real quick. Okay. I know we're not on the air because of the NCAA Tournament First 4. It's also the NIT tonight. Just real quick, a number of games of interest. Utah Valley is playing tonight. They're hosting at 6 o'clock against George Washington. New Mexico is hosting tonight against Sam Houston. That's at 7. Nevada is hosting tonight. That's at 8 with Murray State. And Colorado State is hosting St. Joseph's tonight at 9. That game will actually be on ESPNU. A lot of those other games on ESPN+. Yeah.
Also, I noted this. I sent this out on social media, but it's a fun little note. I don't know if you saw this, Eric. I simulated the NCAA tournament bracket 20 times on evanmia.com. And I was like, okay, how many times are the Aggies? Like, how far do they go? How does all this go for them? So out of 20 times, they won in the first round 11 of those times. So a little better than 50%.
Okay.
How many times do you think they made it to the Sweet 16?
Twice.
Twice. That's how many times they made it.
2 out of 20 times.
2 out of 20 times. One of those, they made it to the Elite 8.
Oh, wow.
And then when they made it to the Elite 8, the team that they faced in the Sweet 16 was High Point, a 12 seed.
High Point. Wow.
Yeah. So we'll probably talk about them in a minute. But yeah, so that was just a fun little thing that I did. I like doing those simulated brackets and just like doing it a bunch of times. And I mean, in the end, it just like plays out. I mean, Evan Mia literally has odds of how often his model like thinks you're going to make it that far. So you kind of just end up playing out those odds. Like Evan Mia has the Aggies at a 59% chance to make the second round. So actually, they did slightly worse in my volume simulations, but just kind of interesting because mainly let's think how often do they make the Sweet 16. It's like you can maybe make it a couple times out of 20.
Yeah.
10% of the time.
Yeah.
But let's look at our brackets. I've loaded up the images and let's see how well these end up showing up here. And the problem is like I can't like put the entire bracket, so we have to like split it into two. But here we've got Eric's bracket. We're looking at his east and west portion of the bracket here. And so let's go over, so let's focus on that top half of the bracket, some of the matchups you've got. And I'm just scanning to see how similar yours are to mine. There's a couple interesting ones in there. But yeah, the upsets you have, or maybe games you were close to picking an upset but didn't. Just let's hear some of those.
Yeah, there's a lot of chalk in here, but I do have some upsets. Probably most notably in the first round on the east side, that South Florida over Louisville. Aggies saw South Florida. They're a team that's got some momentum on their side. Louisville, it's kind of been up and down a little bit, but that's just that's my gut. I don't really have a ton of research on that one. You can prove me wrong on that one, but that's one of the bigger upsets that I have in the first round. Otherwise, in that East and West, a lot of chalk, although they've got some 9 seeds beating 8 seeds, TCU beating Ohio State, Utah State beating Villanova. But most other than that, not a lot of upsets otherwise, kind of looking in that first part of it. And then really going through BYU, I do have them upsetting Gonzaga to get to the Sweet 16. I know BYU's got a lot of injuries, but they've gone now several weeks now. After those injuries, they're kind of reshaped their team. AJ DeBonsa is dragging his team a lot further than a lot of people thought he could in the Big 12 tournament. And Gonzaga has shown some weaknesses. They lost a couple of games in their own West Coast Conference, which is unheard of on most years. So they're not necessarily as impenetrable as they have been in years past. So I think those are some of the bigger upsets and surprises I have on my east side and the west side of my bracket.
All right, so now let's look at let's see if I got this right, your South and Midwest portion.
A lot of chalk there as well. I do have an upset, Texas A&M beating St. Mary's in the 10-7 matchup. So Texas A&M advances. It's going to be an all-Houston matchup, all-Texas matchup, I should say, with Texas A&M and Houston in the second round. But I really like Houston. I see Houston going pretty deep in this, actually. But on the other side, I've got whoever wins between Miami of Ohio and SMU beating Tennessee, and then facing Virginia but losing to the Cavaliers. And so there's St. Louis beating Georgia in that 8-9 matchup. I should have noted in my East and West, I don't have either of I have one number 1 seed advancing to the Final Four and one number 2 seed advancing to the Final Four. So I have an upset there.
You got Duke and Arizona going to the Final Four of the East and West.
I've got UConn and Arizona.
Oh, UConn, excuse me.
Yeah, the thing with Duke is I'm just concerned about some of their injuries and it's how well can they keep going. I know they're the top number 1 seed, but I do worry about their depth a little bit. And then on the South and Midwest brackets, I'm going with Michigan maintaining their number 1 status all throughout. But I've got Vanderbilt pulling off the upset over Florida and Houston beating Vanderbilt. So I've got 2 number 2 seeds in the Final Four and 2 number 1s on the other side. So I've got Arizona and Michigan and then UConn and Houston in the Final Four. And I'm going with Arizona to win this whole thing.
Yeah, it's a good choice. I think there's a kind of 3 overwhelming favorites. Duke, Arizona, and Michigan are probably going to make up about 90% of winners, I think, in a lot of ways.
I can see that. I understand that. But injuries are a thing, and that is something that I worry a little bit about for Duke.
Yep.
Great season. Cam Boozer's been awesome. But they've got some injuries on that roster that eventually I think will catch up to them.
Yeah, it's tricky to deal with. I got a couple texts on the Young Power Sports of Logan text line. One saying the YouTube stream has no audio. It's the only one reporting that. I can double check to make sure it's coming through on mine. Eric, do you want to get to a couple of these other texts while I test that?
8632 texting in. If you don't have Utah State as the champion, you do not have a perfect bracket. Okay. That's great. And then 6391, a couple of texts coming in. 10% chance at the Sweet 16. I'll take it. And then I like being able to see the brackets. Cool feature. Yeah, we're trying to add some new things, and Jason has definitely done a lot of work to make this stream with what we do here on YouTube a little bit more visual, a little more interactive for what we're doing here on the Fan. Again, the Fan KLGN is where these are taking place. So yes, I do have some upsets. I don't know that I really have a Cinderella run on this, Jason, and I'm disappointed in that. I wanted to, but I have a hard time when I look at the matchups. I have a hard time really picking a Cinderella team because those top teams, they have such, the resources there, the depth that they have, the talent they have. It's kind of hard for me to pick a really good Cinderella team to make a run in this tournament, which is depressing.
Yeah, let's start shifting over to where my bracket is now, and I'll be honest, I think there's a lot of similarities to mine and your bracket. There's obviously some differences. I think there's some differences in some of the 8-9 matchups. We both have Utah State. I'm kind of cycling between just so I can see myself because I don't have yours. I have mine in front of me. Let's focus on mine here.
Thank you, 7994, saying you can hear YouTube just fine.
Yeah, there's one person saying there's some glitching issues. I can double check that. Sometimes that's on our end. Sometimes it's just personal internet can be a problem.
Seems to be working fine now. Thank you, 6391-5452. YouTube audio fine. Excellent. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, I know I've had some issues with it being too quiet or too loud and whatnot, yeah. So I'm trying to monitor all that. But yeah, that Louisville-South Florida game, that was one I kind of labored over. I ended up going with Louisville. I know that's a somewhat popular. I know Ryan Hammer has kind of been pounding the drum of South Florida, maybe to the Sweet 16. I did pick Utah State, which I should maybe go back and audit myself to make sure this claim is true, but I actually think I've picked against the Aggies almost every single time they've been in the tournament, going back a while. I've not been that confident in the Aggies. I think I remember picking against them when they ended up beating TCU. I'd have to double check and see if I had them beating UCLA, but I probably picked against them in that. Again, someone can go double check me, make sure I'm not misremembering that, but I am picking the Aggies. I have confidence in that matchup. Wisconsin against High Point, that is one of the most popular upset picks I have seen. It is in that weirdly common 5-12 upset. The 5-12s feel almost as common as the 8-9 upsets.
Yeah. Usually there's at least one.
Yeah, it's just really, really weird. High Point has this viral player who's, I think Chase Johnson is his name, or Johnston. He has attempted 4 2-point attempts the entire season. He's attempted, I think I wrote it somewhere down, 160-something three-pointers, 132.
Oh my gosh.
So he's taken 136 field goal attempts this season, 132 of them from three. Justifiable volume, though, 48.5% from three he's shooting.
Ooh.
So they're comparing him to that Oakland kid that went off and I think they beat Kentucky or whoever it was, or Duke or something like that. Jack Golke or something like that. He's basically everyone is latching onto him, trying to get in soon. And I'll be honest, I'm terrified of popular upset picks because they're almost always wrong. They usually end in blowouts for the popular upset team. I usually run away from as fast as I can. Because if people say, "Oh, that's the popular upset," run away.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the Warren Buffett mentality. If everybody's buying, you need to sell. If everybody's selling, it's time to buy.
Basically, that's kind of the mentality that I took there. Now, I have 1 seeds going chalk the whole way. I have 2 seeds almost entirely going chalk. I got Michigan State upsetting UConn by the end, so I don't have a completely 1-2, 1-2 Elite 8. But I do have the 1 seeds from the East and West both advancing, Duke and Arizona. So we'll now head down to my South and Midwest portion, and it's a lot more chalk here. I do have Akron taking down Texas Tech. I don't feel great about that matchup. Heck, I don't really feel great about picking that section of the bracket anyway, because you have Texas Tech, who is missing JT Toppin, and Alabama just had one of their top guards arrested for having a pound of weed.
Yes, he's kicked off campus.
So I don't know how to pick that part of the bracket. I have Alabama advancing out of that into the Sweet 16 to take on Michigan. I ain't picking them any further than that.
Yeah.
I wasn't comfortable.
I didn't even have them in the Sweet 16.
Yeah, I wasn't.
I had too many distractions.
Yeah, because Texas Tech has actually done pretty well, so picking Akron to beat them was a bit of a I need an upset somewhere kind of pick, and I like Akron. But Texas Tech is actually you can probably safely rely on them to make a bit of a run even without JT Toppin because they've been solid without him. But their ability to make big runs is likely going to be limited. I've got Tennessee over Virginia, 6 seed over the 3 seed there, although I have them losing to Iowa State. Although Iowa State, they're a team that can just randomly fall off. So I'm hesitant to have them going far, but I do have them in the Elite Eight because they are just kind of that good.
Yeah, they could easily just drop a game or run through and win the whole thing.
Yeah, it's just a really tricky team to hang on to. I've also got A&M, Texas A&M over St. Mary's. Then I have Houston beating them in Houston. I also have Vanderbilt over Florida.
Wow.
So we both got that Vanderbilt, Houston Elite Eight. And I also have Houston going to the Final Four and Michigan going to the Final Four. Ultimately, I went with Duke to win it all. There's some injuries, but when you got a player like Cam Boozer, when you've been one of the best teams all year, again, for me, it was picking one of Michigan, Arizona, Duke. Just pick one of them. I think one of those three is going to win it. Put all of them in the Final Four, and it's just, all right, let's just go from there.
Let's go Thunderdome.
And I think I have Michigan in the, let's see, I have it right here. We don't have our Final Fours on this. I couldn't find a way to format that. But yeah, I have Duke against Michigan in the title game. So
I got another a message on the YouTube saying that the audio keeps cutting out. So I'm not sure why that would be inconsistent on our ends. We'll have to keep
I might be just it might be maxing out. I might be jacking the audio up a little too loud.
It's clipping it
to where it's clipping.
Yeah, maybe
that may be what's happening there is we get too loud. So I've had some people saying it's too quiet, and so it go high and maybe it peaks and cuts out and can't stand there.
Yeah, we'll have to see if we can kind of normalize that a little bit. So Jason, let me ask you about brackets. We've shared our brackets here. And we've got ours for reference.
Yeah, here's the proof. There's mine. That's what it says.
It's all there.
Try and get it in frame in once.
So are you a guy that we used ESPN to fill ours out, but
yeah,
there are a lot of different platforms that have brackets you can fill out for different contests. Yahoo, The Athletic. There's a whole bunch of different ones you can go to.
Yep.
Fox Sports has their own. So do you go and fill out a different bracket for every platform? Or are you one who I'm going to fill out my bracket, I'm going to print it out, and every other bracket that I fill out, whether it's in my neighborhood group, my work group, or what I'm doing in my family, I'm going to stick to the same thing on each one? Or do you I'm going to have a little different feel for here, and maybe I'm going to hedge my bets and make a little change on this bracket? So I'm kind of neither, because I am the kind of person who will fill out one bracket. So I did this. This is my family bracket, actually. In my family, it's the name of my bracket is Jason's Expert Picks. This is the one that shows up in my family bracket with my brothers, my dad, some of the wives. I don't know well, to be honest, a couple of my brother's wives probably have brackets that are picked by their husbands. There's also another random kind of joke bracket that me and my brother do that will be entered in. It'll take last place, as it always does, because it's a joke bracket. But we've also got a work bracket that I'll probably try and remember to fill out before I head out or something like that, because I've got until Thursday. Yeah, there's a prize on the line.
$100. And I'm supposed to win it because I'm the sports guy. But someone from accounting or HR or someone who's never even watched a basketball game in their life will end up winning it.
That often happens.
Yeah. But assuming I remember to fill it out, I will fill it out differently from this bracket. And the reason is because I am too lazy to go back and look at this bracket and copy pick for pick what I did.
You won't have it in front of you okay, this is what I did last time. Cross the T's, dot the I's.
If the one we have for work is done through ESPN, I probably could, because I think there was a way to copy it.
That worked for me, actually. So I filled mine out for our work one, and then there was one that my nephew set up, and I went to register for that one, and it just pulled my one I did for work because it was on the same platform.
Okay, so that if I do end up filling it out exactly the same, it'll be because I can just copy paste this one, and I don't. But if I had to sit there and go, hold on, what did I pick for this game, and how far did I have this team? It's no, I'm just gonna I'm gonna do what I did for this, where I clicked ESPN's autofill, And then I went around and made changes where I felt like I wanted to make changes. So that's kind of how I do filling out multiple brackets, which I don't often do. I usually only fill out like 2 at most, typically.
8632 on the text line. Is there a 106.9 bracket challenge?
Yeah, Eric, is there a 106.9 bracket challenge?
Not officially, but we should try to set one up. I
don't
know
that we're not gonna have like an official like prizes or anything like that, but we
prizes
can just,
on the line.
We can just set something up
for listeners of the show and just for fun. We'll create a group. We'll let you know the details how you can join in.
Yeah, we'll put that on
bragging rights.
6391 saying, "Hey, speaking as an accountant, I didn't appreciate that stray hit, Jason." My dad's an accountant, so don't worry. I didn't come from a place of hate. It's just like I had to pick a profession that is typically not always known for knowing sports, except the only accountants I know also like sports. So maybe that wasn't the greatest comparison.
That's funny. Well, look, it's a great time of the year. You got the first 4 going on right now. You got the NIT happening tonight. We got a bunch of Mountain West teams in action tonight. I'm a little surprised. We talked a lot about San Diego State declining an invite to the NIT. You surprised that Grand Canyon didn't participate? I certainly would have thought Grand Canyon could have participated ahead of Wyoming.
Oh yeah, they definitely would have had to turn something down, and they're a better team, obviously. But there are some rosters where, and this is speculation that I don't always like to go into, but there's some rosters where it's like, maybe there are players that are just planning on transferring, and that was a team decision, or they just want to be done with the season. San Diego State and Grand Canyon, they could fall into that, where maybe there's a bunch of players planning on transferring, where especially for San Diego State, the season did not go as well as they would have hoped, which is weird to say, considering they were runner-ups to the regular season champion and tournament champion. And yet I'm going to kind of stand by saying that the season didn't go the way they kind of hoped. Mainly because they missed out on the NCAA tournament. They were wanting to get in. This was supposed to be like kind of one of their banner years where like you're returning Magoon Guath and you got Reese Dixon-Waters coming back from that season-ending injury. He's going to pair with Miles Bird, who he's supposed to take a big sophomore to junior season jump. And nobody got better. They were the exact same team they were last year for the most part.
Yeah, a lot of people looking at that freshman-heavy roster and thinking they're young. A lot of these guys are back. Ooh, watch out for the Aztecs. And
it was justifiable hype. But
but right, everybody thought, boy, this team's going to take a next step, and they're poised to make another deep run in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah,
and they just never really
didn't do it.
Yeah,
6391 saying, "I heard GCU turned down the NIT in hopes of getting invited to the Crown."
Yeah, so I looked that up actually, and the Crown has 8 teams, which are Baylor, Colorado, Creighton, Minnesota, Oklahoma, Rutgers, Stanford, and West Virginia.
There's not a single mid-major in there, is there?
No mid-majors in there. Yeah, Creighton's, I guess, a high mid-major.
So I guess hopes didn't pan out. That was what went wrong for them. So I think they could have competed with that field, though.
Yeah.
I'll say this, because we talk about lack of mid-majors. I don't have a single mid-major that I can know on my bracket getting to the Sweet 16.
I don't have any in my Sweet 16 either. But if you were to look at it and say, this team maybe could get there, which would that team be?
Either VCU or St. Mary's, I think, are the 2 that I would pick. Just scanning the bracket once again. St. Mary's I have losing in the first round, but I think they could win that. I've also got VCU over North Carolina. They can maybe go toe-to-toe with Illinois. I know South Florida, again, that possibility of beating Louisville. But, I think those are kind of your 3.
Then they'd have to get past Michigan State.
Yeah, they'd have to get past Michigan State, which is a really tough draw. So, yeah, I'd say VCU and St. Mary's are probably those would be the 2 biggest hopes. And of course, I've only got one of those in the second round. I don't have Akron in the second round. I didn't pick them, but like those are kind of the main ones that I would say. But I'm kind of worried on behalf of mid-majors. I mean, I'm already working on some data behind the scenes and what may end up turning into it's going to turn into one or more of, a long form article and or a video here on our YouTube channel, kind of going over how mid-majors are getting pushed out of March Madness, not in the sense that there aren't any more mid-major teams, because there's roughly the same number of mid-major teams, but we're losing Cinderellas, and it's possible that, you know, there's been years without mid-majors in the Sweet 16. Not many, like last year, and I think there was one other year like 10 years ago. But in like 20, 30 years, it has happened very few times. But we might end up on 2 years in a row. Like, I've predicted that. I could be wrong. Could very easily be wrong. And Colorado State was dang near close to making it last year to the Sweet 16.
I haven't read the article, but I know I saw the headline earlier. The Athletic has something along those lines. The headline is Cinderellas Bring the Magic to the NCAA Tournament. Excuse me. But are they doomed? And so, yeah, there are others who follow college basketball who feel similar to you, that there is legitimate concern about Cinderellas, so those mid-major teams, sometimes even a low-major team who can get hot at the right time and make an exciting run in the tournament. That's what a lot of folks are watching for and hoping for, is who is that unsung team that not everybody in America follows and understands who they are, that can get hot at the right time and upset some of the power teams. It's becoming harder and harder. Last year, it was as much chalk as it's been in a long time, and this year could be a lot of the same. Look, 1 through 8, all the 1 seeds, all the 2 seeds. I mean, you can find a national champion in any of those.
Yeah,
because their rosters, the way they're built, how much money they spent on those, how deep they are, how talented they are. But beyond that, I mean, it's hard to look at. Neither one of us have a mid-major team in the Sweet 16. Neither one of us have a double-digit seed in the Sweet 16. So it's hard.
Chalk is gonna probably start reigning supreme. Like, and it's one of the things. Like, I saw something about the women's basketball tournament where there has not been a champion outside of like the top 4 seeds. I was like, I can't think of anything more depressing.
Yeah, women's basketball, the disparity is even wider.
Yeah, it's absurd.
But it's been that way for a while.
But it's stayed that way. That's the problem. Like, I don't know, that largely I think comes from sometimes there's just not enough women's basketball. Like, there's not enough good women's basketball and enough girls playing basketball to justify 300-plus college basketball teams, where the top of women's basketball is amazing, but it doesn't go nearly as deep as men's basketball, except men's basketball is consolidating. It's consolidating upward.
Yeah. Yep.
And it's becoming harder and harder to develop. Even though there is a trickle down, there is way more going up than there is coming down.
No.
So it's kind of tricky. 6391, more is coming from one of the GCU reporters. So this is from Brennan Williams saying, per GCU regarding postseason play, saying we had some players banged up and we're concerned with such a quick turnaround, how many players will be available. We are already moving full speed ahead on next year's team, and we are excited about building for next season. GCU wasn't that banged up.
They weren't that banged up.
I don't know if they had any significant injuries.
That's a whiny program that they're sad that they didn't get an opportunity to the NCAA.
Yeah.
Or maybe they held out hope they could get to the crown.
Yeah.
Which wouldn't happen until like early April.
Yeah.
And since they missed that, they're just packing their bags and going home.
I'm a lot more inclined to believe San Diego State, who had multiple players who were actually injured, including one who might have broke his finger or his hand or something.
Yes.
And was still playing in the game with that hand. Until he had to be held out of the championship game.
Yes.
9315 saying, did you fill out your bracket for all the Mountain West teams in the CBI tournament? Well, the CBI is not happening. So
yeah, there is no CBI.
Joke's on you, 9315.
Yeah, no brackets there.
No CBI, no NIT. If you fill out NIT and CBI brackets, then you're a true degenerate. I kind of respect you, but you're a degenerate.
Good for you.
You're a degenerate for college basketball.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where that's at. That's about all I had for content so far. I've kind of run through I had like 3 or 4 pages of notes to run through. Villanova preview, NCAA tournament stuff.
Yeah, and we'll, if there's things that come up that that as we learn more about these teams and their preparations for each other, we'll get into that. Certainly, there are other things that are going on that we'll get into, but this is the best time of the year for me. This is like Christmas.
Yeah.
Games on all the time. You got teams like tonight and tomorrow that are really equally matched. and it's anybody's guess who's going to win and come out of that.
Yep.
And then it's wall to wall on Thursday and Friday. And we'll have all that on the Fan, on 106.9 FM, 1390 AM. We'll have it streaming on the mobile app and on our website. And of course, on Friday afternoon, Utah State, Villanova, pregame coverage on KVNU starting at about probably around 1 o'clock. I don't know if they're going to do expanded or not. I haven't heard that yet. But Jason, you'll be there. You'll be live in San Diego.
Yep.
We're sending you there to be there on Thursday in time for the coaches' press conferences. And have some unique content on Cache Valley Daily, so watch for that. And try to find a way to still tap in and do some form of the full court press. Even though we won't have an opportunity to be over the air on the radio, still find some ways to still do some unique podcasts here on our YouTube channel.
Yeah, next couple of days are going to be very exclusive. Like, I don't think we're going to have anything on radio tomorrow.
Tomorrow will be like today.
Yeah, or like there'll be something from like 4 to 4:30. Oh yeah, tomorrow will be like today,
yeah,
and then Thursday
tomorrow is the same.
And Thursday, Friday it'd be YouTube only stuff.
Yeah, because the NCAA tournament broadcast starts at like 10 a.m.
Yeah,
and is going to go until probably 10 or 11 at night.
Yeah, late at night. So it's just wall to wall college basketball. You can pause in the middle to talk about. Of course, the Utah State game, at least on Friday, will be maybe getting over around the time that. I don't know. We might do a morning edition of that.
Yeah,
YouTube.
we'll probably have to do a morning after on that one.
Maybe
on
a Saturday or something. We'll figure something out. We're gonna be playing this week by ear, but thankfully since we've been able to do these YouTube streams, we have another way to get out to the listeners, even if our radio waves are being taken over, justifiably so, taken over by March Madness.
Yes.
But that's going to do it for us today. Thank you so much for listening and watching, either 106.9 FM, 1390 AM, The Fan, and here on YouTube, The Fan KLG. And make sure to tune in tomorrow. It'll be much like today. More Utah State coverage. We'll get a little bit more into football, but also continue our previewing of Utah State going up against Villanova this Friday. Thanks so much for watching, guys.